Welcome to the channel. In this quick video, I'm going to go over some commonly held guitar myths that people still believe even in 2023. So as most of us know, learning the guitar is no easy task, and it's obviously not made easier by a lot of, shall we say, myths that are still kind of floating about even in 2023. So I'm going to start with the first one, and that is that you need to play an acoustic before you start playing electric. I hear this one a lot. In fact, I've been hearing this for a lot of years now. And it's a very strange one to me. It's always been very much lost on me, and in fact, it's not even something I started hearing until like years after I started playing. Because when I was a kid, I just wanted an electric guitar. It never occurred to me, or it was never impressed upon me, that I had to play an acoustic before I graduated to the instrument that I actually liked. That was always a strange mentality to me. To me, to my way of thinking, you are going to gain more out of your progress if you play an instrument you actually like. It's kind of like, I don't really see the point in kind of purposefully making it that grueling. You start off with this so-called inferior instrument before you get up to the good stuff, sort of thing. It was always a little bit lost on me, so I think that's always been a bit of a bugbearer for me. The bottom line is you are going to progress a lot faster if you're playing the instrument that's aligned with the music that you actually like. So if you want to play guitar solos, if you want to play if you want to play metal riffs and stuff like that, so whether it be AC/DC, whether it be Van Halen, whether it be Ozzy, or any of that, it makes more sense to get an electric guitar. Because if you're going to play that on acoustic, you're not going to get the full experience out of it. It's kind of just going to suck. You're not going to progress as fast. You're not going to enjoy it, and it's just going to be a lose-lose situation for you. So yeah, my advice is get an instrument that's associated with the kind of music that you actually like, and you'll fare much better. The second commonly held belief is that you need long fingers to play guitar. This is an advantage, but it is not an absolute. There are really famous players with long fingers. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Paul Gilbert. He has really long fingers and is able to make those stretches with those arpeggios really easily. So obviously that's something that he is genetically gifted with. But that doesn't mean you can't do exactly the same thing even with just average size hands. I've seen players do absolutely unreal things with just, again, average size, maybe even kind of small hands, really. So I wouldn't let that discourage you. Don't let that hold you back. It doesn't mean that you can't make that without. It doesn't mean that you can't make those big stretches without some practice. You know what I mean? So really, don't put obstacles in your own way, and just kind of just find a way. But I hear this all the time. It's just kind of like, oh, I didn't learn to play guitar because my fingers weren't long enough, or I have sausage fingers. I hear that all the time. I mean, there's a couple of players that I can think of who don't have particularly big hands, and they're doing real things. I mean, Yngwie Malmsteen, Michael Romeo, for example, they do not have really big hands at all, and they do unreal things. So yeah, don't let that hold you back. It's an advantage, but it is not an absolute. Another commonly held belief is that you don't need to know music theory. I used to hear this in college a lot, and you see it floating around on guitar forums even today. And it tends to be made in defense of very famous players who are basically self-taught, who are great. But this idea that they don't know any theory at all, I don't buy it. They know at least some music theory, even on just an intuitive level. They have at least over time learned the relationship between notes, chords, and scales and what have you. They might not have put formal names to it, or been taught those names in a classroom, for example. But they do know some music theory. So this idea that they don't know any theory at all and just play purely by feel, like I said, I don't buy that whatsoever. So it's a bit of a funny idea, that you're just going to learn the instrument, even guitar. I'm not going to learn, any theory behind it at all. It's kind of funny, actually. There's nothing wrong with learning music theory. Even just a basic amount. You can solve problems within your own music, for example, a lot quicker if you can at least learn like the relationship between notes, and between intervals and what have you. another thing I hear is that, it stifles creativity. It kind of, it holds you back and stuff like that. It makes you robotic and mechanical and what have you. I've heard all kinds of stuff like that. It's a little bit silly. So my advice is just to learn a little bit of music theory, and it'll stand you in good stead. It won't stifle your creativity. In fact, you'll solve problems a lot quicker with it. So yeah, just learn it. And finally, the last commonly held belief I'd like to address is that you had to have been playing since you were really young. And by really young, I mean a toddler. There's kind of some truth to this, but not really. It's a little more complicated than that. There are lots of famous examples of people who started when they were basically toddlers, when the instrument was basically bigger than them, who were great players now. Equally, lots of famous examples of players who didn't start until they were teenagers, who went on to also find success. So there isn't a hard and fast answer to it. Personally, I know people who have been playing since, who didn't start playing until they were 18, 19, 20 maybe, who are also great players. So you don't need to have been playing since you're a toddler in order to be great. In fact, it doesn't mean that you're going to be great, because I used to know people when I was in university who started playing, who got lessons bought for them when they were kids and everything like that. And they're kind of like, they were good musicians, don't get me wrong, but they weren't outstanding musicians. But on the other side of it, I know people who didn't have any of that, right, who didn't get all the lessons and all the instruments bought for them or anything like that, who are outstanding players. So yeah, don't be disheartened with it, and just because you missed out when you're a toddler doesn't mean that you can't become good at the instrument. So yeah, hope that helps. Just a quick reminder, if you enjoy this video, smash that like button down below and hit the subscribe button for future videos.